Hi, in this video we're going to discuss on the trending model nowadays is agile model. So far we have seen those models opt for the stable requirements projects, whereas agile model is for the unstable requirements project. When the requirement is going to change, we don't know. The requirement may change at any time. At the phase of designing or coding or testing, if the client think that some other way we need to develop and some other way we need to test it, then obviously the requirements will change at any phase of the SDLC. So for unstable requirements projects, the client thinks that my requirement may change at any time, then the suitable model is agile model. Before we are going to see how the flow of the agile, we need to discuss about various terminologies in agile model, because without understanding these terminologies you may not able to catch the agile process. So let we discuss in this video about the terminologies and then we will move on to the agile process. The first one, what all the various roles will be there in agile model? Scrum team. Scrum team is nothing but who are working for that particular project, including developers, testers, all are coming under Scrum team. That depends on the size of the project. Number of developers will be there, number of testers will be there, and also the scrum of scrums also will be there. It means that in agile process is telling that not more than 7 to 8 people in a team. If more than 7 to 8 people will be there, then they are coming under again separate Scrum team, because very less teams will give more productivity. That is the agile process is telling. So Scrum team is something like who are all the developers, testers or DB or whoever are working for our project, for our module, let me assume, or for our functionalities. That is something like Scrum team. Next one is a product owner. Product owner job is he is going to prioritize the work to the entire team. He will tell us the entire team what to work first, what to work next. His job is to identify the latest requirements and he will prioritize which one to work first, which one to work next. That is the job of a product owner. Scrum master. Scrum master job is he is going to conduct a 15 minutes meeting with the entire team, and if any obstacles or issues, he will guide you how to resolve those issues, or to whom you need to contact to resolve those issues will be taken care by the Scrum master. And Scrum master is not a manager. No managers in agile process. It is a self-motivated model. Everybody need to motivate ourselves. Like in other models, manager, director, associate director, senior director, no, all these roles will not be there in agile process. It is a everybody need to motivate themselves. Okay. So next, task board. Coming to the process, I will explain you later. Coming to the task board. Task board is something like there is a dashboard will be there. What are all the works are there, everything they are going to write down, and where we are, which work, how much percentage is completed, who is working on that particular task, everything we can able to see on that dashboard. Usually most of the real-time companies nowadays we are using Jira for that, or version 1 tool is there, we can use version 1 also. So that depends on the company's budget. So they are going to use the agile management tools. Okay, so next, coming back to the backlogs side. First one is here you can see release backlog. You can see here release backlog will be there. Release backlog is something like for this particular production release, what are all the different requirements we are going to deliver. Instead of requirements in agile model, we are calling them as stories. Story is nothing but requirement. One particular requirement, one small requirement is a story. So release backlog is something like what are all the different stories we are going to deliver for this particular release, production release, live release. That is something like release backlog. From this release backlog, okay, from this release backlog, we are going to, where we are getting this release backlog? From the product backlog. Product backlog is something like for that particular product, what are all the latest requirements are there? What are all the different requirements we have to work? Entire product, all the different stories we are going to work, that is nothing but product backlog. From the product backlog, the product owner will prioritize, and for this release, what are all the stories we are targeting? Those stories he will put it into a release backlog. Okay, so product backlog is, it contains all the stories of the entire product. We are going to release those all product backlog stories in various releases. Release backlog talks about this particular release. What are all the stories we are targeting? Who is going to do the task? Product owner will be is going to prioritize the stories. What to work first, what to work next. Those priorities set by the product owner. That is release backlog and product backlog. Next, sprint backlog. Sprint, the word you might heard about it. Sprint is something like the small duration we are going to work, entire team is going to work for the particular stories. Usually most of the cases 2 weeks duration will be there. So in these 2 weeks we need to develop it, we need to test it, we need to showcase it to the product owner and stakeholders, and we need to deliver. So sprint backlog is something like we are going to get high priority stories from the release backlog and put it into a sprint backlog. Let me assume release backlog is having 10 stories. Okay, 10 stories in 2 weeks duration we may not able to complete. So then let me assume only 5 stories we can able to complete it in 2 weeks. Then that release we are going to have 2 sprints. Each sprint have 2 weeks. So first sprint, top prioritized 5 stories will be there. Those stories we are going to develop it, test it, showcase it, and deliver to the client. Second sprint, again 2 weeks, remaining 5 stories. Again develop it, test it, showcase it, deliver to the customer. So sprint is something like the duration we are working on to deliver something to the customer. The duration is something like sprint. Sprint backlog is nothing but stories. What stories we are targeting for that particular sprint? That is nothing but sprint backlog. Next, I hope you understand. Next, burn down chart. The burn down chart is something like, let me assume sprint is a 2 weeks. Okay, every day we are working on it. We are burning our hours. Burning means we are spending some hours. Burning means in that sprint those hours are completed and we are having remaining days hours only. In that case, the Scrum Master will check every day how many hours completed of our team, how many hours are pending. You can able to see some graph structure. What are all the hours completed, how much work is pending. He can clearly see in that chart, it will show him that how much work completed, how much work is pending by the team. Are we in the position to complete those stories in that sprint or not? Scrum Master will identify. Okay, that is something like burn down chart. It is a chart showing that how many hours we burned. Burn means spent in that sprint, and how many hours remaining, how much work is pending. Are we in the position to complete the remaining work in those hours or not? He is going to identify by using burn down chart. Okay, fine. So, and also I am not talking about FAQs here. Meetings. What are all the various meetings we are going to have in agile process? Sprint planning. Sprint planning is something like in the beginning of the sprint. Okay, once product owner is prioritized the stories, what we are targeting for that sprint. So first what we need to do is product backlog prepared prior to the meeting. In that meeting, in the first half of the sprint planning, is selecting the stories on the top of prioritized by the product owner. We need to select some stories. What are all we can complete it in that sprint. We need to select the stories. Development team need to select the stories. Okay, so these stories we are going to complete in this sprint. So that is first half. Second half, we are going to discuss about we need to ask questions to the product owner if at all we are having on those stories. We need to ask the questions or clarifications to the product owner on the stories we selected for that particular sprint. And also in sprint planning, we are going to give the story points. Story points are Fibonacci series 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 8, 13, 21. So Fibonacci series. So now you may get it out. What is the importance of story point? Story point tells us that criticality of the story, complexity of the story. If lesser points will be there, less complexity. More points will be there, more complexity. Now again you may get it out. Who will give the story points? The entire Scrum team is going to give the story points. Entire Scrum team is going to give the story points. How we are going to calculate the story points for a particular story? So anyway, in sprint planning, we are going to the each and every story. We are identifying the complexity. Based on the complexity, most famous model to calculate the story points is planning poker method the people are going to use. Everybody need to raise their card. How many story points they are going to give. Based on that, whoever is giving more number of people, same number, that highest number will be allocated to that particular story. So that way is a planning poker method that we are going to do in sprint planning. Okay, finally at the end of sprint planning, what we are getting? We are identifying the stories for that particular sprint. We are giving the story points to the particular stories, and so how much time it is going to take for the stories also we are assuming. That is the output from the sprint planning meeting. Next one is a daily Scrum meeting. It is going to happen every day 15 minutes. It held by the Scrum Master, and entire Scrum team need to be available, and everybody need to give the update what they did from last Scrum meeting to this meeting, what is the output, and 3 things they are going to discuss in this meeting. From last Scrum meeting to this Scrum meeting, what they have done and what is their plan for next day, and what are all the obstacles, issues they are having. These 3 things everybody need to talk in daily Scrum meeting. Good. Next, sprint review. Okay, once development is completed, they are going to give it that story to the testing team. That story testing testers will do it, and once everything is working fine, or if some bugs are there, we're going to again send it back to the development team. They're going to fix it. Once they fixed it, okay, again we are going to retest it. If everything is working fine, then we need to showcase that particular story functionality to the product owner and stakeholders. If they are okay with that particular story, then we can consider that story is accepted by the client. Next, some more terminologies in the estimations part. User stories. As I told you, user story is something like what? Requirement in other models. We are calling in this model as small requirement is a user story. Okay. And story points. As I told you, story points are Fibonacci series. Significance of story points is it will tell us complexity of the story. Similarly, business value. The business value is that each and every story will have its own business value. Without business value, we are not going to work on that story. That is not a prioritized one. So what product owner will select it? All the high priority stories will be selected by the product owner. So business value is something will tells us that how much importance of that story to the client. Okay. and estimated team capacity. Let me assume 2 weeks sprint is there, 10 working days. And also you need to remember one thing, in agile model the deliverable hours are, or the client is expecting delivery only for 6 hours, not 8 hours. So the deliverable hours in agile model are 6 hours, not 8 hours. He is expecting productivity only for 6 hours. So estimating capacity means, let me assume 2 weeks sprint is there, 10 days. Okay, let me assume 5 members are there in our team. Every day 30 hours, 10 days, 10 into 30, 300 hours is our capacity. That is something like estimated team capacity. Next, velocity will be there. What is velocity? Velocity is something like how many hours we are taking to complete each story point, or the rate, what rate we are converting each story into a done state. That is nothing but the average hours to convert each story point is a velocity. For example, how they are going to consider velocity is, for example, in the sprint 1, our velocity, we are able to complete the story points, 30 story points in a sprint 1, sprint 2, 35, sprint 3, 25. So they are going to take a average, that is our velocity. How many story points we are able to complete in each and every sprint on an average. So these are all the different terminologies, and here you can see here few more terms also there. Time box. What is time box? The time to finish a task is a time box. Timelines to finish a particular task. And chickens. Chickens means the people who are working for our project but not accountable for delivery. Product owner is there, he is not accountable for delivery. Stakeholders are there, they are not accountable for delivery. Who are accountable for delivery? Development team is accountable, testing team is accountable, DB team is accountable. So who are not accountable, we are calling them as chickens. Who are accountable, we are calling them as pigs. Okay, so single wrinkle neck, this is obviously the product owner will be there. So these are all the various terminologies usually we required to understand the agile model. These are all the various terminologies in the agile model we should use. Okay, I hope you understand all these terminologies. In this, whatever I discussed, everything is one interview question. Everything. What is Scrum team? What is the job of a product owner? What is the job of a Scrum master? What is product backlog? What is release backlog? What is story? What is story? What is the importance of story points? What you are going to discuss in Scrum meeting? In sprint planning, what will happen? What is sprint review? And also here one more thing is also there, sprint retrospection. What is sprint retrospection? As I told you, okay, development people develop it, testing people test it. If there are no bugs are there, or all the bugs are closed, then we are giving demo to the stakeholders and product owner. Okay, that story is completed. If all the stories are completed in the sprint, then that sprint is completed. Before going to next sprint, in the sprint retrospection meeting, we are going to discuss what went well in this sprint, what went wrong, what are the mistakes we have done, what to learn from those mistakes. That is something like sprint retrospection. Okay, product owner is optional in this meeting, and Scrum Master and the entire team will be involving in this meeting. They all are going to discuss about what went well, what went wrong in this current sprint. Okay, so what is sprint review? What is sprint retrospection? What is chickens? Who are all chickens? Who are all pigs? And what is the importance of the story points? What is the importance of business value for each and every story? What is velocity? What is our team capacity? These all are interview questions. Everything is an interview question. Okay, so I hope you understand. If you have any questions, please post it to me. I hope you understand all these. These all are interview questions. Each and everything is an interview question. Okay, if you understand these all terminologies, in the next video we are going to see about the agile flow. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like my channel. Thank you.